Hare Krishna, dear devotees. We are now reading from the Vara concerning Mada Ekadashi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Sutta Goswami said, O sages, let me offer my humble and respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Hari, Bhagavan Shri Krishna, the son of Devaki and Vasudeva, by whose mercy I can describe the fast day that removes all kinds of sins. It was to the devoted Yudhishthira that Lord Krishna glorified the 24 primary Ekadashis, which destroy sin. And now I shall recount one of those narrations to you. Great learned sages have selected these 24 narrations from the 18 Puranas, for they are truly sublime. Yudhishthira Maharaj said, O Lord Krishna, O Vasudeva, please accept my humble obeisances. Please describe to me the Ekadashi that occurs during the light part of the month of Chaitra, March-April. What is its name, and what are its glories? Lord Shri Krishna replied, O Yudhishthira, please listen to me attentively as I relate the ancient history of this sacred Ekadashi, a history Vasishta Muni one related to King Dilipa, the great-grandfather of Lord Ramachandra. King Dilipa asked the great sage Vasishta, O wise Brahmana, I wish to hear about the Ekadashi that comes during the light part of the month of Chaitra. Please describe it to me. Vasishta Muni replied, O king, your inquiry is glorious. Gladly shall I tell you what you wish to know. The Ekadashi that occurs during the light fortnight of Chaitra is named Mada Ekadashi. It consumes all sins, as a forest fire consumes a supply of dry firewood. It is very purifying, and it bestows the highest merit upon one who faithfully observes it. O king, now hear an ancient history, which is so meritorious that it removes all one's sins simply by being heard. Once long ago, there existed a city-state named Pura, which was decorated with gold and jewels, and in which sharp-fanged snakes would enjoy intoxication. King Pundarika was the ruler of this most beautiful kingdom, which numbered many Gandharvas, Kinnaras, and Apsaras amongst its citizens. So here we can see that this Ekadashi has been celebrated for thousands and thousands of years. It is not something new, since here we have the great Vasishta Muni, who is speaking to the grandfather, great-grandfather of Lord Ramachandra. So we are speaking here of more than 2 million years ago. And now they're speaking about a city named Ratnapura, which has what we call Naga snakes. So the Nagas are a species of humanoids. That means they are also like us. They have arms and legs, but they can shapeshift, and their natural form is that of great snakes. So such Nagas, they reside in different realms. So there's a realm which is lower than us, which is commonly known as Nagaloka. When Bhima was tied up by the sinful Duryodhana and was given poison and thrown into the river, I believe it was the Ganges, I forgot, or the Yamuna. So Bhima was brought in from an undercurrent of the river, and he woke up in that kingdom of the Nagas. And actually the snakes bit him, and the poison that came out from these snakes was actually the antidote for Duryodhana's poison. And they recognize him as being the younger brother of Maharaj Yudhishthir, and they decided to give him the elixir that those snakes drink. Bhima drank a lot of those. I believe it was 10 pots, and because of that he became very strong. He was already strong by birth, but he became even stronger. From the Mahabharata we learn also that Ulupi, who is one of the wives of Arjuna, is also a Naga. So there is possibility of union between human beings and great snakes. And Arjuna did beget a son in the womb of Ulupi, who was very powerful. So there are many species of humanoids throughout the universe. Out of 8,400,000 species, 400,000 are of humanoid forms, just like Rakshasas. Here we have also Gandharvas, Kinnaras, Apsaras. The Gandharvas, so here we can see that those Nagas live amongst the Gandharvas, Kinnaras, and Apsaras. So these are not the Nagas that live under us. These are the Nagas that live above us, because there are 14 planetary systems. We reside in the middle one. So these are celestial snakes, because they are higher than human beings. They are very powerful. They can shape-shift, change shape. They have mystic power. Another great snake, another Naga in the Mahabharata, at one point Karna was fighting with Arjuna during the battle of Kurukshetra, and he wanted to kill him. And one Naga took the shape of an arrow. So they cannot only take shape of other living entities, but they can also take shape of inanimate objects. So one Naga entered Karna's quiver in the shape of an arrow, and Karna released the arrow. And Krishna, seeing that snake arrow coming, he pressed down on the chariot, and the chariot lowered into the earth. The wheels sank into the earth, and thus the snake arrow hit the diadem on Arjuna's head. One of Arjuna's name is because of this diadem, which his father, Lord Indra, gave him. So let us continue. Among the Gandharvas were Lalita and his wife Lalita, who was an especially lovely dancer. These two were intensely attracted to each other, and their home was full of great wealth and fine food. Lalita loved her husband dearly, and likewise he constantly thought of her within his heart. Once at the court of King Pundarika, many Gandharvas were dancing, and Lalita was singing alone, without his wife. He could not help thinking about her as he sang, and because of this distraction, he lost track of the song's meter and melody. Indeed, Lalita sang the ending of his song improperly, and one of the envious snakes, who was in the attendance at the king's court, complained to the king that Lalita was absorbed in thinking of his wife instead of his sovereign. The king became furious upon hearing this, and his eyes turned crimson with rage. Suddenly he shouted, "O foolish Nav! Because you were lustfully thinking of a woman instead of reverently thinking of your king as you performed your court duties, I curse you to at once become a cannibal." O king, Lalita immediately became a fearful cannibal, a great man-eating demon whose appearance terrified everyone. His arms were 8 miles long. His mouth was as big as a huge cave. His eyes were as awesome as the sun and moon. His nostrils resembled enormous pits in the earth. His neck was a veritable mountain. His hips were 4 miles wide, and his gigantic body stood at full 64 miles high. Thus poor Lalita, the loving Gandharva singer, had to suffer the reaction of his offense against King Pundarika. So we can see the powerful way that the king cursed him, and the king was so powerful that simply by his curse he could transform the Gandharva. The Gandharva are a race of celestial beings who are expert in singing. It is said that a Gandharva will never sing twice the same song. So they are very much excellent in the art of singing. So here, King Pundarika cursed him because he was not doing his duty. So we can see that even in heaven, there is anger, there is envy. The snake envied him, and he's the one who told the king about this. So now this great Rakshasa, 64 miles high. Can you imagine this? 64-mile high man-eating demon rushes towards you. So he became a Rakshasa, from Gandharva to Rakshasa. Seeing her husband suffering as a horrible cannibal, Lalita became overwhelmed with grief. She thought, "Now that my dear husband is suffering the effects of the king's curse, what is to be my lot? What should I do? Where should I go?" In this way, Lalita grieved day and night. Instead of enjoying life as a Gandharva's wife, she had to wander everywhere in the thick jungle with her monstrous husband, who had fallen completely under the spell of the king's curse and was wholly engaged in terrible sinful activities. He wandered fitfully across forbidding region, a once beautiful Gandharva, now reduced to the ghastly behavior of a man-eater. Utterly distraught to see her dear husband suffer so much in his dreadful condition, Lalita began to cry as she followed his mad journey. Just see the chastity of Lalita. Her husband became a fearful Rakshasa and she did not leave him. By good fortune, however, Lalita came upon the sage Shringi one day. He was sitting on the peak of the famous Vindhyachala hill. Approaching him, she immediately offered the ascetic her respectful obeisances. The sage noticed her bowing down before him and said, "O most beautiful one, who are you? Whose daughter are you? And why have you come here? Please tell me everything in truth." Lalita replied, "O great sage, I am the daughter of the great Gandharva Viradhanva, and my name is Lalita. I roam the forests and plains with my dear husband, whom King Pundarika has cursed to become a man-eating demon. O Brahmana, I am greatly aggrieved to see his ferocious form and terribly sinful activities. O Master, please tell me how I can perform some act of atonement on behalf of my husband. What pious act can I perform to free him from his demonic form, O best of Brahmanas?" The sage replied, "O heavenly maiden, there is an Ekadashi named Mada that occurs in the light fortnight of the month of Chaitra. It is coming up soon. Whoever fasts on this day has all his desires fulfilled. If you observe this Ekadashi fast according to its rules and regulation, and give the merit you thus earn to your husband, he will be freed from the curse at once." Lalita was overjoyed to hear these words from the sage. A very important thing here. First of all, Ekadashi is extremely powerful to relieve one from the amount of so much sins. Another thing is that one can offer the result of one's Ekadashi fasting to someone else. So for those of you who wish to help maybe a family member who is not a devotee, or even a demon, you see, because the husband was transformed into a demon's body, so you can do so. You can fast and offer the result of your austerity to your dear ones. This is something to remember. Lalita faithfully observed the fast of Kamada Ekadashi according to the instruction of the sage Shringi, and on Vadasi, she appeared before him and the deity of Lord Vasudeva and said, "I have faithfully observed the fast of Kamada Ekadashi. By the merit earned through my observance of this fast, let my husband be free from the curse that has turned him into a demoniac cannibal. May the merit I have gained thus free him from misery." So if you wish to offer the result the next day, which is called Vadasi, which means 12, and Kadashi means 11, go in front of the deity of the Lord and pray just like Lalita has done, in order to give the merit to someone. As soon as Lalita finished speaking, her husband, who stood nearby, was at once freed from the king's curse. He immediately regained his original form as the Gandharva Lalita, a handsome, heavenly singer adorned with many beautiful ornaments. Now, with his wife Lalita, he could enjoy even more opulence than before. All this was accomplished by the power and glory of Mada Ekadashi. At last the Gandharva couple boarded a celestial airplane and ascended to heaven. Lord Shri Krishna continued, O Yudhishthira, best of kings, anyone who hears this wonderful narration should certainly observe holy Mada Ekadashi to the best of his ability. Such great merit does it bestow upon the faithful devotee. I have therefore described its glories to you for the benefit of all humanity. There is no better Ekadashi than Mada Ekadashi, and it can eradicate even the sin of killing a Brahmana, and it also nullifies demoniac curses and cleanses the consciousness. In all the three worlds, among movable and immovable living entities, there is no better day. Thus ends the Vrijavasi narration of the glories of Chaitra Shukla Ekadashi or Mada Ekadashi from the Vara Purana. So, very beautiful story. When I was a child, my father used to read the Ekadashi story to me. Every Ekadashi, I remember, we used to read the story together. So I will be doing this every Ekadashi, making a video like this and speaking, reading the story. So it's a beautiful story. We can see that even in heaven there is also difficulties. You see, there was an envious snake. There was the anger of the king. You know, the poor Gandharva was thinking about his wife. This is not such a great fault. And because he didn't sing properly the end of his song, he got cursed. So you can see the temperament of the residents of heaven also. So heavenly existence is not very much good. You know, we should not desire this, because not only is it flickering, but the same types of sufferings as we encounter are there also. Of course, minimized, but they're so engrossed in sense gratification, because everything there has biggest multiplication of sense gratification. That means the sex life you enjoy here is thousands of times better there. The intoxication that you enjoy here is thousands of times better there. So, and they're also envious of one another. You see, just here I will show you this verse, which speaks, shows how demigods become envious of someone who's advancing spiritually here on earth. This is Srimad Bhagavatam 11 Canto, chapter 18, text 14. This man taking sannyas is going to surpass us and go back home, back to Godhead. Thus thinking, the demigods create stumbling blocks on the path of the sannyasi by appearing before him in the shape of his former wife or other women and attractive objects. But the sannyasi should pay the demigods and their manifestations no heed. Just see, a sannyasi who is on his way back home, back to Godhead, becomes the envy of the demigods. So the demigods are all devotees, there's no doubt about that. They all know the supremacy of the Supreme Lord. They are all devotees of Lord Krishna or Vishnu. But here, a man who's making spiritual advancement, they become envious. And that is the symptom of a Kanishtadikari, which means a third-class devotee. The third-class devotee is envious of seeing other devotee advance spiritually. When one advances spiritually, one of the symptoms is that he will start to think about others' welfare, material and spiritual, especially spiritual welfare. So if he sees another devotee advance spiritually, he will become gladdened. He will be happy that this devotee is becoming more and more enlightened, more and more devoted to the Supreme Lord. So that should be a source of joy, not of envy. Okay, let's see some other words. Okay, here. Second Canto, Chapter 2, Text 2. The way of presentation of the Vedic sounds is so bewildering that it directs the intelligence of the people to meaningless things like the heavenly kingdoms. The conditioned souls hover in dreams of such heavenly illusory pleasures, but actually they do not relish any tangible happiness in such places. So happiness, material happiness, is a relative thing. To a pig, eating stool and having mud bath and having sex with his own family members is happiness. To us human beings, because our consciousness is higher, we see how degraded such activities are. Similarly, demigods who look at our earthly life here think that it is very disgusting, even though we might think, oh, I'm having wonderful sex life with beautiful women, I'm eating palatable dishes. These women are described in Sastra as being like frogs compared to heavenly maiden. The most beautiful woman here, they say, Miss Universe or Miss whatever. Sastra says they are like frogs compared to heavenly women. So we might find them very attractive, but demigods, they find them very repulsive because the women in heaven are much more beautiful. And similarly, the dishes that we might cook here, we might think, oh, I'm eating something very nice, but we have no idea of the culinary art of the demigods, you see. So our existence is very much fallen if we compare it to those of the demigods. There's a story like that, why before Bhishma was born, there were other babies born before him, and Mother Ganga, who is Bhishma's mother, she killed all of them, throwing them in the river one by one. This was an arrangement that she made with Shantanu, that Maharaj Shantanu, I will marry you in one condition, never criticize any of my acts. So Maharaj Shantanu said okay. So every time that a son was born, or any baby, she would take the baby and throw them immediately into the Ganges, and the baby would die. Why this is so? It's because I believe it was the 8 Vasus, if I'm not mistaken, they were cursed to take birth on earth because they had stolen a cow from a great sage in heaven. So they approached Ganga, Mother Ganga, and they asked her, they said, we have been cursed to take birth on earth, but we do not want to take birth into the womb of a female, a human being, a human woman. Just see, they think it's so degrading, so disgusting to take birth into the womb of a human woman. That means they despise our existence. You see, for them, we are like the hogs. We are like the hogs eating their own stool, So this is why the arrangement was made that, okay, you go on earth, you become the wife of Maharaj Shantanu and will be born as your son. And since the demigods appeased the sage after stealing his cow, the sage said, don't worry, you will be released very fast, but your leader will not. So therefore, they were released fast from this curse. They were thrown into the Ganges and went back to their heavenly kingdom. But Bhishma had to live his whole life. So you can see that they despise our existence. So similarly, again, here this verse is spoken, I believe, by Sukadev Goswami. Yes, Sukadev Goswami speaking the verse that we saw just now. He says that meaningless things like heavenly kingdoms. So to a pure devotee, even heavenly life is despicable. So we think the hogs are disgusting. The demigods think our life is disgusting. Well, the pure devotee thinks the demigod's life is disgusting. Why? Because it is devoid of Krishna Bhakti. Okay, excuse me, my other camera overheated, so I had to change to my phone. So true happiness consists of one's relationship with the Supreme Lord. That is called Bhakti Yoga. This is where real pleasure is, because we are spiritual living entities. Even the demigods are different from their bodies. Even though their bodies, from a material point of view, might be very much beautiful and very much attractive, they are not these bodies. And they are acting also in false ego. Even though the false ego is more purified and is closer to pure ego, it is still contaminated by the mode of goodness. Okay, let's see some more verse concerning heaven. Okay, here, this is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 20, text 145. There are many types of Vedic literatures and supplementary Puranas. In each of them, there are particular demigods who are spoken of as the chief demigods. This is just to create an illusion for moving and non-moving living entities. Let them perpetually engage in such imaginations. However, when one analytically studies all these Vedic literatures collectively, he comes to the conclusion that Lord Vishnu is the one and only Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so this is a bit different topic, but why now in Hinduism there are so many competitions? Some people claim that no, Lord Shiva is supreme, or we should worship Brahma or Durga in this way. Krishna gives the answer in Bhagavad Gita. He says that if one desire to worship a particular demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. So how does he do that? In this way. The way that the Puranas are written, if one study only one Purana, he will come to a different conclusion. He will think that this demigod is supreme or that demigod is supreme. In this way, his faith becomes strong in this demigod. And as Paramatma, the Lord in the heart, he will say, yes, that demigod is supreme. Now you engage in his worship in this way. But here it is said that Lord Vishnu only is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is a whole different topic. We're not going to get into this, but I wanted to share this. Okay, so here, just now I spoke about the demigod having a sattva guna body. This is 8th Canto, chapter 5, text 31. Since our bodies are made of sattva guna, we, the demigods, are internally and externally situated in goodness. All the great saints are also situated in that way. Therefore, if even we cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, what is to be said of those who are most insignificant in their bodily constitutions, being situated in the modes of passion and ignorance? How can they understand the Lord? Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto him. So you see how they speak of other living entity like us, very insignificant in their bodily constitutions. So they think like this as very low, because we are more in the mode of passion and ignorance. But as we saw, they are not fully in the mode of goodness, because everything in the material world is not pure. Therefore, when we say that someone is situated in the mode of goodness, just like a demigod or a brahmana, he cannot be 100%. Only the pure devotee is on the Shuddha Sattva platform, which means pure unalloyed goodness. It cannot be touched by passion and ignorance. But as long as one is conditioned by the modes, he will be influenced by the two lower qualities. Otherwise, how is it possible that they become envious at a sannyasi who's on his way back to Godhead? Or how is it that the king cursed? Of course the king might have been a naga, but... So, nothing is pure in the material world. Now here are the demigods lamenting about their heavenly existence. The demigods continue. After performing the very difficult tasks of executing Vedic ritualistic sacrifices, undergoing austerities, observing vows, and giving charity, we have achieved this position as inhabitants of the heavenly planets. But what is the value of this achievement? Here we are certainly very engaged in material sense gratification, and therefore we can hardly remember the lotus feet of Lord Narayana. Indeed, because of our excessive sense gratification, we have almost forgotten his lotus feet. This is not very hard to understand. So those of you who are, fixed up devotees who are chanting 16 rounds every day, following the 4 regulative principles, already you know that to try to be engaged always in devotional service is not an easy thing. You know that Maya is very strong. And plus, the Lord is protecting us. The Lord is not giving us so much material enjoyment and accessibility to wealth and beautiful women, all these things. Now imagine you were put in a situation where every single woman around you is, thousands of times more beautiful than any woman you've seen, and you have so much wealth, and you have embroidered drinks that tastes like nectar and that give you an intoxicated state in the mode of goodness. And how can you make spiritual advancement in such an atmosphere? Therefore, heaven is not to be desired by any devotee, because it is definitely a trap. You see, we should not trust ourselves to be put in any testful conditions. We should not think that, oh, now I'm very fixed up, any position I can defend myself. No, we are not strong. We should pray to the Lord that please put me into position, into a situation, into an environment that will be beneficial for my spiritual advancement. Never mind what is the arrangement. It might be tough, it might be some suffering, but please put me into a situation where I will realize that material life is suffering, and that my business is to render transcendental service to you. So, okay. So I think we will stop here. I do not want to make these videos too long. So every Ekadashi we will try to do it in this way, read the story and speak a little bit about what we've learned. So thank you very much. I'm asking for your blessings that I may be able to carry this out for every Ekadashi. So Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Prabhupada.